Hello folks, Scott here with the new My Monthly Hero April 2022 kit. Of course, it's still coming to us in these great 8x10 zippered pouches. Looks like we're getting away from the art museum this month and going to the garden. Yes, it's springtime. The highlight of this kit is this great big 6x6 cling stamp of flowers and bees. Isn't that nice? A nice rubber cling stamp. We also get 3 layering stencils that will actually color all of the flowers and the leaves. I don't think it colors the bees, but we've got 3 layering stencils. You can see those. Let's see, that goes, there we go. So those are the flowers. And then some flower detail on top of that. And then this one, I believe, does the greenery. I believe that fits. 3 layering stencils. And our stamp set this month is a mix and match collection of sentiments. Thank you for being, and just a little note to say you are. These are obviously complemented by this amazing fancy die cut. Amazing word fancy die with a shadow around it. Amazing. We also have in our dies here a bee and one of the flowers and one of the flower stems. I believe this cuts out that flower. We're close. There we go. That die cuts out that flower. This die cuts out that flower. And the bee cuts out this bee, although I imagine it would cut out most any bee. So along with that amazing fancy word die, we've got all these. Thank you for everything. Mother's Day. Also, we can make Mother's Day cards with this. Have an amazing birthday. Mom, you're amazing. I appreciate you. Friend, mother, you are. Birthday, teacher. A little bit of everything there in that mix and match stamp set. Then we also get, of course, to complement our layering stencils, we get 3 ink cubes. We've got rose madder, green apple, and cotton candy. Nice, bright, springy colors. And of course, those are complemented with some enamel dots. These are in the shape of hearts and drops and just dots. So some of those are like teardrops or raindrops, if you like. Of course, these match the inks perfectly. And then to round out this kit, to help us with our stencils, we get another Hero Arts blending brush. These are packed, so full of bristles and so soft. Another Hero Arts blending brush. That's everything we get in our new spring kit, My Monthly Hero, April 2022. So this month we are celebrating spring and all of the amazing people in our lives. Let's dig in. So this is our big image for the month. I figured we might just go ahead and experiment with a few ways of coloring this background stamp. So I stamped it on some Nina 110-pound cardstock. This is stamped with intense black ink. And I stamped it on a piece of, this is a Bristol Smooth cardstock. I thought I'd give my new Tombow markers a try on this Bristol Smooth cardstock. And then I used some contour ink to stamp it on some watercolor paper. This is a couple of stamps. See if maybe we can do a little no-line watercoloring. I might even use my Tombow markers on this too. I just got them. And of course, then I stamped it on some craft cardstock. I figured we could use our colored pencils on this. Colored pencils work really well on craft cardstock. And I did stamp and emboss it on some of this pitch black cardstock using some gold embossing powder. I don't know if we'll color this or just cut it out, but I thought that was a great way to get started. Let's go ahead and look at those stencils. So there's been a great deal made of the Tim Holtz sticky media mat lately that he recently came out, and how you can use it to hold your cardstock down to your table. Well, I have these sticky grid sheets from Sizzix. I've had them for a long time. I got the small size, and I also have the larger size that are, what, 8x10? Let's try one of these and see if this won't actually do about the same thing. Now, I've already used this one before So we're going to stick it right here on my glass media mat and expose both sides. And then let's stick that. I don't think that's going anywhere. That really holds it quite well. We'll break out some tape here, and we can tape our stencils down. We'll start with our #1 stencil that colors the flowers. I think we'll use all of the inks that are in the kit. I'm not using any pixie spray or anything on the back of this stencil, just laid on top, lined up, and we're going in with our new Hero Arts brush and the Cotton Candy ink cube. Make sure there's a little bit of color everywhere. And before we take the stencil off, I'm just going to wipe the stencil down with a rag. And I'll clean off most of the ink and move most of that ink onto our cardstock. Very nice. We'll peel that up and move on to stencil 2, which is the detail portion. Line this up, and I'm going to go ahead and use that same. I have 3 Hero Arts brushes, and now one of them is yellow, one of them is blue, and one of them is going to be red. So I've got my primaries all in my Hero Arts brushes. So we'll jump to the Rose Madder, and we'll do our detail with the Rose Madder. Let's pull that off. Here's the big reveal. Doesn't that look nice? So let's move on to stencil number 3. This is the leaves and the greenery of this background stamp. And we'll go to our green apple ink cube and use the green apple for all the greens in this. That's a nice bright green. And that is our stencil blended background stamp with the colors of the kit. I'll grab a CT3 Spectrum Noir marker and do these bumblebees. I think that's all the bumblebees. Let's go a little shade darker. Go with a CT4 and a little shading on the edges. And that's a quick example of our stencils and our ink cubes and our blending brush. Peels right up from my board, right off of my Sizzix sticky mat. We'll see how I use this to make cards with. Let's move on to another medium. I think I'm going to try some colored pencils. So let's try some Tombow markers. These are brand new. My local Blick store was running a Tombow sale. This is a pack of 54 colors in this nice little case here. I love that we've got this little added storage on the side. So let's try using Tombow markers on some Bristol Smooth cardstock. Let's go for a purple flower this time. So I'll just basically add color at where I think the darkest parts would be. And then we'll use a brush and some water to give some tone to that. I like these brush tips. I'm using a Black Velvet Silver number 2 brush. I'm just going to use that to pull our color out. Let's add a little deeper purple to this. Nice. That's the way. These Tombow markers work brilliantly. Really like that. So for our watercolor piece, I thought we'd try and throw some caution to the wind, and I dragged out my old Pelican gouache watercolors. Let's watercolor this one. So that was my little adventure in coloring with this kit. And this is my 10 cards. Everything's on a white card base. We got a couple of different sized cards in there. For our first card, I went, of course, with the stencil colored stamping that I did to begin with. And we've got a thank you for everything card. Now, I die cut this panel with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, just straight right along the edges, as close as I could get to the end. I've got a nice piece left over that I could certainly use on another card. I just glued that to the front of a white card base. The white background was a little bit stark to me, so I actually took some of my Pebbles chalks. These fun little chalk palettes are great to use to add background on something that's already been stamped and colored, because you can get pretty light applications of that on the background. It colors up that white. You can see right there on the edge where it goes from bluish to white. It colors up that background just a little bit and really doesn't, of course I didn't just cover the whole thing, but it really doesn't interfere with all of the stenciling and coloring on that. I stamped the sentiment with some intense black ink and embossed that with clear embossing powder, trimmed that down. I added a little blue to that white cardstock too, added that to the front of my card with some foam tape, added 3 of the little enamel dots just to highlight that sentiment and give us a little bit of shine. Thank you for everything. It's really a nice stamp, really a great set of stencils to color that whole thing. I mean, the only thing you have to hand color if you use those stencils are the bees. And how easy are bees to color? So I was really enamored with just plain old normal embossing with this stamp. And we've got Mom, You're Amazing card. Gold on black works every time. Of course, you can tell I did a little bit of white colored pencils inside the flowers, just the flowers, not the leaves. I thought that softened up the black on this card very nicely. So I cut, this is a 2 7/8 inch square, and I cut that out of my stamped panel. And I added a 3-inch square mat behind that. That's just about, I actually even trimmed off just little bitty corners on the edge to get it to fit on this A2 card. The vertical band is 1 3/4 inches by 5.5, and I added a thin 1 7/8 inch wide mat behind that of black, just to give it a little edge, and glued them down to a white card base. Then I added, these are 2 just 1/4 inch strips of this same gold cardstock that I used to die cut the Amazing with. 1/4 inch strips glued on the side of that. I then mounted my square on the center of that with some foam tape. I die cut the Amazing from the same gold cardstock and the shadow from some more pitch black cardstock, and I glued them together and then down to the square. This little bit of foam tape underneath those. I stamped this sentiment, embossed it in Hero Arts gold embossing powder, trimmed that down to size, added that with some thin foam squares as well. Mom, You're Amazing. You can't go wrong with gold on black. And I really like the little soft touch of white that kind of breaks that black up nicely. This just might be the card I give my mother for Mother's Day this year. So my watercolor adventure was not very much fun. For some reason or another, I drew black onto the bees, and I thought it just kind of ruined that whole background. I was not terrifically pleased with this, so I decided to use this piece for some die cutting. So we've got those frame dies that cut out 2 of the flowers and 1 of the bees from that background stamp. So I thought I'd do that for this next card. We have a simple I love you card. So this is my little no-line watercoloring. I think it works really well with just these 3 flowers here. I like that much more than that whole background. Maybe I just don't like the yellow on that. I don't know. This is the flower that was die cut with the included frame cut, this flower here on the left. I then just fussy cut these other 2 flowers out of the rest of that stamp. I actually cut this extra leaf out as well. I ink blended a little bit of the cotton candy ink on the card front on my A2 white card base, just right behind where all the flowers are going to go. I mounted the flowers together with glue and some foam tape. I stamped the sentiment again in intense black ink and embossed that with some clear embossing powder. I think you can see that there. And then added some of the enamel hearts from the kit for a little more shine, a little bit more dimension. I love you, a nice, pretty, soft No line watercoloring Valentine card. I do think my colored pencils on that craft paper is probably my favorite coloring of the month with this kit. Card number 4, again on a white card base, and we have You Are Amazing in Every Way. Look at that card. I love this one. Now, I did take that cling stamp and stamped it on the card front. This is an A2 white card base, and I stamped that on the card base with the left edge of that stamp right on the edge of this card base. I stamped that in the Hero Arts Contour ink. You can see that there, nice little gray outlines. And because I stamped it on the edge of the stamp, I was able to trim off the left half of the stamped and colored panel and match that up with the clear stamping on the card base. So it's not immediately apparent, but actually, if you look, it becomes also apparent. This is 2.5 inches wide. Glued that down to my card base. I die cut the Amazing from 4 pieces of that same craft cardstock and glued those all together. And then I used some of that, this is the Tim Holtz Distress Foundry Wax. Thank you, Pat. This is the gilded color. I've been playing with this just a little bit. I just got this a couple of weeks ago, and I used some of that on the bottom half of that die cut. And I tell you, that foundry wax is so shiny. You add a little heat to it. You can put it on with your finger or a brush, and then you apply a little heat, and it melts faster than embossing powder and gives you this really great shine. I just love that. I stamped the sentiments, again, with embossing and watermark ink, and embossed those with the same Hero Arts Gold embossing powder. So they're actually very close to that gilded foundry wax on the Amazing. I die cut the shadow die from a piece of 40-pound vellum, glued the Amazing on top, glued those down to the card base. You Are Amazing in Every Way. That foundry wax really gives a great shine. Look at that card. Amazing. So I only used half of that colored panel on this card. I've got to use the other half. I like it so much. I have to use it on another card. This one is I Appreciate You. This is a sentiment from the stamp set. So there was just over 3 inches left of the colored pencil cling stamp. So I split that in half, or very close to half, and I glued both panels to a white card base with just a 1/2 inch gap between them both here in the center. I stamped the sentiment using walnut stain Distress Oxide ink and did emboss that with some clear embossing powder, and then some Love from Lizzie brown mirror peel-offs I used to trim the edges of both of those panels. That gives us some terrific shine, and a nice little green enamel heart highlights the sentiment there. Every time I color something with my colored pencils, I love them more and more. I don't know why. And then my new Tombow markers gave us this card, another Mother's Day card. Have an amazing Mother's Day, which is kind of a riff on an Eclipse card. I die cut the colored background just a little off center so that I could get that Amazing to go straight across the middle and not cut across any of the big purple flowers. So this panel is actually 3 3/4 inch by 5 inches. I cut that with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. Then I cut the Amazing just right out of the center without any of the purple flowers on it. And then I added a 4 inch by 5 1/4 inch pitch black matte behind our panel and glued those down to our white card base. I cut the word shadow from more of the pitch black cardstock, glued that to the back of the Amazing, and glued those both in place, taking care to match up the background pattern. I stamped and embossed the sentiments on some more scrap white cardstock, embossed those with clear embossing powder, trimmed them to size, added them to the card front with some foam tape. Have an amazing Mother's Day. I just might have to make this one my Mother's Day card this year. I really like this. Have an amazing Mother's Day. And so for my next card, this is one of my odd-sized cards. This is a 4-bar card, otherwise known as an A1 card. This is 3.5 by 4 7/8 inches. This card was inspired by the sentiment from our sentiment stamp set, and we've got Just a little note to say you are amazing. It's a little note, that's for sure. This is just a piece of some linen textured yellow cardstock from my stash. I trimmed that down to 4.5 inches by 3 1/8 inches, and I added a thin mat, which is actually 4 5/8 inches by 3 1/4 inches, matted that together, glued those both down to this card front. This mat, I used some of this black metallic cardstock. That's some Tim Holtz metallic jewels cardstock. I really like that. I die cut that from some of that metallic cardstock, and then 2 other pieces of pitch black cardstock, glued those all together. Really nice shine on that. Stamped the sentiment again with intense black ink, embossed that with some clear embossing powder, glued amazing down to our card front, added 3 of our little enamel clear dots for a little shine and texture. Just a little note to say you are amazing. I really like that die, especially kind of when it's all by itself. I think that's really sharp and certainly says it all. Okay, so I still have some black and gold. I still have some watercolor here. So I thought I would play with that stencil one more time, except this time I figured we might try it without the stamp. Pleasantly surprised at how nice this came out. We have "You Are Special" with that really soft inking in the background. I took my time using the stencils on this and taped pieces off so that I could get 3 different colors of flowers going here. I really love those big yellow flowers. Those are ink blended with lemon drop ink and then some Distress Oxide Wild Honey. I tried to get some ombre going in all of the stenciling. These blue flowers, the blue flowers are Hero Hue's Splash for the light color and Hero Hue's Blue Hawaii for the darker color. Again, trying to keep those darker at the bottom, lighter at the petal ends. The pink flowers, of course, are the cotton candy and rose madder that were in our kit. All of the leaves are actually just done with the green apple ink from our kit. I did them all very lightly, and then I went back in with small blending brushes and added a bit of ombre at their bases, gave them a little texture, a little dimension. That came out so nicely. It was definitely worth the extra time I devoted to detailing this stencils. So this is a 2 3/4 inch strip of the background. I matted that on a 3-inch strip of Hero Hue's Kiwi cardstock and glued those to my white card base. I stamped the sentiment using some Blueprint Sketch Distress Oxide ink, embossed that with some clear embossing powder, and I die cut this special die that was from my stash. I think I was just getting tired of everything being so amazing. So I thought, well, maybe special would be nice. And I like the size of this special. It's really nice and kind of understated. And the UR, of course, is from our stamp set in this kit. Anyway, I die cut the special from some plain blue cardstock in my stash. I die cut it 4 times, stacked and glued those all together. I added just a little bit of Spectrum Noir sparkle pen on that to give that just a little bit of sparkle. I think you can see some sparkle there. You are special. Really pretty. I couldn't resist. I just had to go ahead and use the other part of that panel. And I realized it would fit on a mini slimline card. Now this is your standard mini slimline size, 3 1/4 inches by 6 1/4 inches. And we have "Thank You for Being." Not amazing, not special, just "Thank you for being." That tickles me. Of course, the stamp in our kit is "Thank you for being Anne," but I just cut off the Anne at the end of that and stamped "Thank you for being." So I cut the other piece of my stenciled background with no stamping to 2 3/4 inches by 5 3/4 inches, and I added a thin mat of Hero Hue's Canary cardstock behind that, and then glued those down to my card base. I stamped the sentiment using Blue Hawaii reactive ink and embossed that with some embossing powder. Who needs to be amazing when I'm thankful that you simply exist? Yes, it makes me giggle. I also think it's slightly profound and just a little bit thoughtful. Thank you for being. So after doing almost 10 cards with big backgrounds and great notes, here's a little white space here. I was really punning for some white space for my last card here. Maybe a little pun. So for card number 10, we have amazing. With all of these bees flying around. Yes, be amazing. There's a little pun for you. I actually considered doing this with just one bee, but I stamped a few of them, so I figured why not? So we've got actually 7 bees here. These are all die cut with the included frame die for the little bee. I stamped the bees all on scraps of Bristol Smooth cardstock and colored those with my Zig Clean Color real brush markers. Die cut them all out. I colored up just a scrap of white cardstock. With this is lemon drop ink and again that Wild Honey Distress Oxide ink. Just made a light ombre on some cardstock and die cut the amazing out of that and then glue that down to a pitch black shadow piece and down to my card front. I bent up the wings of the bees just a little bit and added them all with some foam tape on the front. They almost look like they're flying around that amazing. Of course, the amazing is honey colored. I did print this sentiment on the inside of the card using my Silhouette software, and this is the Blackjack font. I will have links to this font, and I will have links to all of my products over on my website at cardcutups.com. Be amazing. Bzzz. I love this. So much nice white space. So much you can do with this great cling stamp. And that wraps up my 10 cards using the My Monthly Hero April 2022 kit. This cling stamp is lovely and actually quite versatile. And the simple fact that it comes with stencils to color the whole thing. You could color this in 49 different arrangements and have a beautiful background anytime. I also love just using the stencils without the stamp for some truly soft and beautiful backgrounds. We actually have a bright, colorful assortment of cards this month. I only used the amazing die 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So only half cards, half of the cards. The cling stamp I used on almost every one of the cards, I guess, except for this card. So the cling stamp is featured on 9 out of these 10 cards. I had a great time playing around with the different ways to color this great background cling stamp. We even managed to get a little bit of a pun this month too. I hope I've managed to pique your imagination or maybe inspire some fun coloring from you with this post. This kit is still available at Hero Arts. If you'd like to grab one for yourself, please use my links in the description down below. It is always greatly appreciated. I'm pretty pleased with these 10 cards. I only doubled up on that cling stamp twice. They both are quite different from each other. I suppose we should always expect some flowers in our My Monthly Hero kits around this time of year. It was nice to get back to some ultimately stamping basics after a couple of months of uncommonly artistic offerings. And for a quick bit of news, I believe it was in February, late February, where we got all of our IKEA cabinets to complete my craft room. We actually spent a great deal of time this last month installing all of the cabinets, so everything is in. Stay tuned and I will do a little craft room tour, a little quick rundown of everything I've put in my fabulous IKEA cabinets and my desk/bed in our guest room /office/craft room. So stay tuned for that. Thank you. Thank you so very much for sharing your time with me here. Please remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Remember, don't run with scissors. I send you and yours spring blessings, warm hugs, and happy crafting.
For more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.